This player did not get to attack one time in 14 turns. This player essentially got locked out of using their entire bench. And this player couldn't figure out how to win when I kept throwing his hand away. And that's because this deck isn't just for winning. It's for winning like an asshole. So the last time I made a video about a deck, several people left comments and complaints essentially saying, this is a bad video because you didn't include a deck list. Now, as far as that goes, I did include a deck list. It just appears that a lot of people didn't watch until the end of the video, which is where I'd included it. So for this one, we're going to make sure we don't run into that problem by including the deck list right up front. So allow me to present the A-hole deck. Now, if you're looking for a different name for this deck, because it includes 2 Dialga EXs, 2 Porygons, 2 Pokeballs, and 2 Porygon-Zs, you can of course call it the Diagon Ball Z deck, or the DBZ deck for short, but of course I enjoy just calling it the A-hole deck. And the reason I call it that is because you don't just beat your opponent by overwhelming them, doing too much damage. No, you start by tanking everything that your opponent can possibly throw at you, and then you essentially make the game unplayable for them. So you win by being a dick. So, to start us off, we have 2 Dialga EXs who you can of course play straight. They can just simply load each other up with metal energy, do lots of damage, just a very stable card, and it's a basic so you can play it right away. We have the full evolutionary line, 2 copies each of Porygon, Porygon-2, and Porygon-Z. I like the older Porygon because of the data scan ability, which is really useful for determining where you want to put the energy that Dialga is generating, because you can essentially take a look. And it actually gives you a ton of information when you have cards like Pokeball and Professor X and Pokemon Communication, because a lot of these shuffle the deck. So you can look at the next card, and if it's a card you want, you can hold off on using one of those other items, whereas if it's not, then you know it's safe to both use one of those cards and then have the deck shuffled. So really, really useful for making smart plays. The Pokemon Communication is really, really useful for getting the Porygon-Z online. The Potion just makes you even tankier. The Pokeballs are also really useful for getting the Porygon-Z online and getting a Dialga onto the field. The Giant Capes are really, really useful for just tanking. The Sabrina is, of course, an excellent utility tool for sniping a quick kill. Leaf is going to be really good for when you want to retreat, because both of the Pokemon you're playing, at most, will only ever cost 2 energy to retreat. Dawn is really useful for allowing Dialga to do 100 damage on only the 3rd turn of placing energy, so really, really strong for that combo. Mars is, of course, very important for being an a-hole, and Professor's Research is also about drawing cards. Essentially, this deck is about making sure you can survive until you get Porygon-Z online. So everything in this deck, for the most part, is either messing with your opponent, making your front line very, very tanky, or making sure you're able to draw or trade out the cards that you need so that you can get a Porygon-Z online immediately. Now, there are some things you can add to this deck to make it a little bit more rude, like a Glameow turning into a Purugly so that you can pick a card from the opponent's hand and toss it away, but I don't like diluting the pool. I find that this deck is really, really reliable when you can simply get Porygon-Z onto the field. I've seen people suggest running Mew, but again, I like to know that, for example, if I have one of my Dialgas already on the field, my Pokeball has a 2 in 3 chance of giving me a Porygon that I need immediately, and as soon as I have that, I have data scan, so I have a lot more information to work with. I've seen people play Mawile, who can remove an energy from an opponent's card, which is also a fun addition, but I find that this is the tightest and most reliable version of this deck if you both want to torment your opponent and want to win. So let's take a look at the gameplay. So one of the nice things about this deck is it does not matter whether you go first or second, but you're always hoping that you have one of your Dialgas on the field, which of course if you're just running the Dialgas and the Porygons, you have a 50-50. So as you can see here, in this first example, I get both Dialgas pretty quickly. And the reason you want a Dialga is so you can immediately start feeding energy. You essentially get 2 for 1 on your energy, because as soon as you put 2 energy on the first Dialga EX and then it casts, you immediately get to place 2 more energy onto one of your benched Pokemon. So we've already drawn the Porygon-2, which is going to be really useful because now we have the Pokemon Communication, and of course we already have the Porygon-Z in our hand, which means that we are going to get that Porygon-Z nice and early. So obviously for this first video, I wanted to show an example of when things go pretty smoothly. And of course, this is against both a Darkrai EX and a Weevil EX. And as you know, it's very much based around having that darkness energy. But what you'll see me do here is, soon as I have the Porygon-Z ready to go, I am going to swap the Porygon-Z in. Now, they attacked the Porygon-Z, but they didn't do anywhere near enough damage, which means I can immediately swap in and take out that card. But now that I can change their energy, the Darkrai EX has no way of gaining additional darkness energy unless they get really, really lucky, which means I've completely nullified the ability and it can't attack. The Weevil needed a darkness energy, it can't attack, so that shut down that entire match immediately. Porygon-Z online, match over, the opponent recognized that. Now, this is a less ideal draw. We've started with a Porygon here, and we're playing against a fairly standard electric deck. Now, electric decks come out of the gate pretty quickly and start swinging, so this is definitely a much more competitive match, simply because they bring a lot more damage up front. But I do have the ability, thanks to Porygon, to keep peeking at what cards I have coming up, so I let Porygon take a hit, essentially because I had to, and then I am tempted to use the Professor Oak, so that gets me a Pokeball, and now I have both Dialgas. The Pokeball I know will give me the other Porygon, so now I don't mind essentially letting the other Porygon tank and be destroyed, and I see that I'm going to get a Porygon-2 next, so I already know that I'm that close to the Porygon-Z. Now, they want to swap someone in, so I'm fine letting the Zapdos hit the Dialga once. I evolve the Porygon. I could have taken a look at the card, but I still have the other data scan, so no need. I still have a potion, which I've used, so I do damage to the Zapdos there, but I put 2 energy on the other Dialga because I don't have the Porygon-Z yet. So I want to make sure that I have the other Dialga ready to go if I need it, but I continue to use the potions to make sure that I can weather the storm here. So do a little bit more damage, but now the other Dialga EX is locked and loaded. So they have the Zapdos ability fully online. They hit me for 100 damage. Could have taken that Dialga out on that turn, but that's okay. They got average luck and only hit 50-50, so I'm able to use Leaf and to retreat it, which means I now have a full health Dialga EX up front, and I take out the Zapdos EX. Now, this is a version of playing this deck straight, essentially not getting the Porygon-Z, and that's why having the data scan is useful, because if I don't see that I have the Porygon-Z, then I know to load up the other Dialga. Now that I know the Porygon-Z is coming, I can use the Professor Oak to get the Porygon-Z and start putting energy on it. However, because they have a Pikachu ready to go and dealing full damage, I need to hit it for the full 100. So in this match, I don't actually get to make use of the Porygon-Z, which is an unfortunate side effect of the way the deck is structured. Sometimes you have to rely solely on the Dialga, but even against a really aggressive, quick, hard-hitting deck, you can just rely on the Dialgas and still get the win. So that's an example of when you don't get the draws you want in quite the order that you want. But as you saw, you can still put it together pretty quickly. So in this one, again, we're starting with Porygon, which is useful because we can take a peek at the next card, but you'd always rather have the Dialga up front. So I immediately retreated out. I've essentially wasted an energy, but I'm usually able to recover from that. So I can see I'm getting another Porygon-Z, but in my hand, I already have the Porygon-2 and a Porygon-Z. So I'm in pretty good shape because I'm going to get this Porygon evolved pretty quickly. Now, I'm kind of thankful that we're against a poison-type deck because, as I mentioned, the Dialgas, especially with either the Rocky Hat or the Giant Cape, are going to be very tanky. The earlier version of this deck I was running had that Rocky Hat, which I've since swapped out for the Cape, but if you're finding that you just need slightly more damage early, you can of course still use the Hat, but I found the Cape was overall just a bit more reliable, so I did end up switching it out. But this was a particularly fun match, so I wanted you guys to see the footage. So already have the Porygon-2, and we've already given it 2 energy, which means on the very next turn, the Porygon-Z will be ready to go, and we can immediately start messing with their energy. And I use the data scan just to see what we have coming up, put the energy on the Porygon-Z, use the Leaf to retreat out the Dialga EX. There we go, we evolve the Porygon-Z, and immediately get our first kill, but also change up the energy. Which means that now, every darkness character that they have on the field, they can't actually use. They're able to use that ability, but they can't actually attack because they can't equip an energy that it can use. So we hit it for another 80, but even if they retreat it, again, they're evolving all of these darkness characters, but they can't actually use them. The only one that they can put any energy on is the Purugly. So as soon as we deal with the Purugly, they're out of tools. So we've gotten our second kill. They're going to have to put the Purugly in. I'm sure that they really want to use their other characters, but now we've given them a water energy. We're essentially just tormenting this player because they have this entire deck full of all of these Pokemon, and they simply can't use them. They're just sitting there wondering when they're going to get to make use of any of their other cards, and the answer is never, because we've committed to torturing them. And as I mentioned, you don't necessarily win slowly, just steadily. So, again, Purugly, the only one able to make use of any of this energy. The 3 cards in the back are essentially in purgatory. They're unusable. They're hoping for a 1 in 8 chance of getting the energy. Now, of course, they finally do take out the Porygon-Z, but by this time, Dialga's fully loaded, and we just get our 3rd and final kill and win the match. And that's essentially why it's effective to lock your opponent off from using their entire bench. So, this particular match I just thought was too funny not to include. If we're talking about being an a-hole, we really dashed the dreams of a Dragonite player here. So, as you can see, I put the Porygon down there. We have a Dialga. We already have the Porygon-Z, making good use of the tools that we have. I obviously want to get Dialga to the forefront, but I do have the benefit of knowing that this player wants to load up their Dratini into Dragonair, into Dragonite, and so they've already got one of the water energies going. They're just going to need a lightning energy, and they should be pretty set. But so far, the game is only giving them water energy, but they have the Druddigon up front, so they've got time. Now, we have the Porygon-Z on the field, so then I'm giving energy to the Porygon-Z, and using the Sabrina just so that I can deal some damage to the Dratini and make them have to waste something to get it back off the field, because I know that they want to load it up. So I'm just trying to make their life difficult and mess with them. But now we have the Porygon-Z, and I am completely fine with this. I'm gonna use the leaf to bring the Porygon-Z out and put the Dialga EX in so that I can immediately generate enough energy for Porygon-Z to attack, and also have enough energy for Dialga to be pulled out. Now, because I see that they're essentially just waiting on the lightning energy, I actually don't want to risk changing it into lightning when they still don't have it. So instead I use Dawn to immediately allow Dialga EX to hit for 100 so that we can get the first Druddigon kill. Now I see, again, they only have that water energy, but up next is the lightning energy that they finally need. And now they have the Dragonite, which means now it's time to mess with them, because we're not actually going to let them attack with this Dragonite that they've been loading up for the entire game. That is essentially the first attack that they're going to do. Otherwise, it's all been just retaliation damage, but I would rather get hit by the Druddigon instead of one-shotting it to change that lightning into a grass energy, which means they still aren't ready to play Dragonite, so they have to put a Jigglypuff in just to give it the grass energy so that they can wait, but they do have a lightning energy coming up next turn. However, I'm not going to allow them to have that lightning energy, so we've used Porygon-Z again, and now they have a darkness energy instead, which means they still don't have the lightning energy, which means they still can't use the Dragonite, and I can kill the Jigglypuff, so they have to give up. We've essentially robbed them of everything, just made the game completely unplayable for them, and they spent the entire time just trying to load up a Dragonite, and in 14 turns, it was never going to get to attack. So I think you understand the concept behind this deck, that you can use Mars to make them throw their cards away. If they manage to take out one of your Dialga EXs, you just play Mars, and however many cards they have in their hand, they throw those all away, and they get to draw one card. So you can use that anytime that you think that they're about to get a big evolution and mess with them that way. And in addition to making them throw their cards away, you can just keep changing up their energy and really mess with them. And of course, you can just keep tanking and tanking and tanking, because a Dialga EX with a giant cape has almost 200 HP, not quite, but getting there. It can absorb just an insane amount of damage. So you can stall and stall until you're ready to just cut them off from all their energy, at which point, if they don't have a deck that heavily relies on colorless energy, they're in a lot of trouble, and in most cases, simply can no longer continue to play the game. So I've been having an insane amount of fun just messing with people, and I've been winning at least 60% of the matches that I'm playing with this deck. Every once in a while, I do run into a player that gets a lucky Misty, or a player that's running like a Darkrai Weevil that gets it online almost immediately and is just able to do too much damage before I'm fully set up because I'm getting unlucky draws. But for the most part, this deck has been very reliable, and it's absolutely winning more than half of his matches, and in many instances like the ones you saw here, it's pretty funny how it's managing to win. However, because people have been discussing what decks have been winning the most, I am actually going to make another video right after this showing the deck that I have been winning almost every single match I've been playing with it. And outside of getting particularly unlucky or running into a player that just gets a super lucky Misty right away or something like that, I've been beating almost everyone. So I'm going to show my most winning deck in the next video, but I've been having way too much fun with this deck that I couldn't not make a video about it, so I wanted to share it with you guys. But that said, this video's gone on long enough, so thank you guys very much for checking out this video. Please be sure to drop a like, subscribe to the channel, let me know in the comments what deck you have been having the most fun with, and I will see you guys real soon with the next video. Until then, peace!